Welcome to the Wellbeing Uprising. I'm your host, Bethany Ainsley. Today we're tackling a modern dilemma. Has technology freed us from the 9 to 5, or has it trapped us in an always-on cycle we can't escape? We'll explore the impact of living in a world where our devices are always within reach, and ask whether changes like the 4-day work week could be the solution to reclaiming our time and boosting productivity.
It was Wall Street, management consulting, investment banking, the worst of the worst in terms of intensity, like burnout, a badge of honor, you had to prove that you could work that way.
Joining me are two guests who have lived these questions. First, Alexander Bell, an entrepreneur and tech expert who has helped companies harness technology for growth and who's outspoken about how we need to use it more mindfully.
I struggle with this idea that the tech-enabled future is going to make all of our lives better. I think it's going to make a small percentage of our lives better.
Also joining me is Vic Morgan, CEO at VentureStream, a digital agency proving that you can thrive in business whilst running a successful 4-day work week.
We have more customers, we have more turnover, our bottom line is improved.
So Vic, VentureStream has been running a 4-day work week for a little while now. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
It started for us in lockdown, and like most companies, we were all working very, very differently than we ever imagined. But we did kind of put some conscious thought into how we wanted to work when that stopped. Now we actually were looking around the globe a little bit, and there was some interesting tests in Iceland, actually, which is a little bit better known for work-life balance and progressive cultural management thinking in some ways when it comes to work. So we basically put a trial in place, had great feedback from staff, which you might expect, but we also had just great feedback of how it affected the way we work too. So 4 years on, that's been a permanent fixture for us in the business, and we've learned a lot. Staff have really benefited in significant ways, and I think the business is stronger for it too.
So when did you start that trial? Did you start during COVID?
It was during COVID. The reality is we were all, the notion of working from home, all the things that are standard things now, hybrid working, remote working, that was just cast upon us all, right? We were furloughing staff for a while out of necessity. And actually, in some ways, our trial of 4-day work week happened when we were in that mode. And we actually realized we were still exceptionally productive. So I was thinking back to some of my business history lessons, and I think it was Henry Ford in the 1920s who basically invented the notion of a weekend. It used to be 6-day work weeks, and I think the thought was there was no way we could ever work just a 5-day work week. Well, that absurdity proved to be pretty viable, didn't it? So yeah, it's been going on better part of 5 years now. Yeah.
And have you found that productivity has stayed the same, improved? What's been the outcome?
It's definitely improved. Staff are much happier. Clearly kind of love this way of working. I guess if you quantified the time impact, we are essentially paying for 76 days a year in paid leave for staff. But ultimately, we have a similar headcount, employee count that we did at the beginning of this trial, and we have more customers, we have more turnover, our bottom line is improved. So I think that was the ultimate leap of faith. I suppose we did feel like it was a leap of faith because until you actually are trying to make a significant step like this, then you're just not going to see what the impact is.
I'm just really, really interested. Has there only been a time where those metrics have started to creep, head the wrong direction, and for you to kind of go, have we done the right thing here? Because presumably it's incredibly difficult to go back. Once you've started that process, it would be incredibly
definitely
difficult.
And I think we knew that even when we set it off as a trial. I personally felt like there was no going back. Well, the no going back moment is when the BBC found out that we were one of the first companies to trial it, and they asked us to come on site and film an episode of the One Show, where it culminated with us announcing it was going to be full time and permanent. So I kind of knew once it was out, for all the media world to see, it would be no turning back. But in terms of the part of your question of what impact have there been blips along the way? Honestly, no. I really thought there might be times when times got tight and maybe you needed to reflect a little bit about where the pinch points were. But I think it ends up changing the culture so much. It naturally ingrains a different culture and way of working. It really becomes the new norm. Yeah.
So in terms of work-life balance, do you think the productivity has increased because there's improved work-life balance?
I mean, it has to have increased on a pure basis of the amount of time worked. Ultimately, our costs are the same because we're ultimately paying for that day off. But yeah, I think, implicitly what it must be saying is that there was 20% extra productivity built in there. Now, mind you, at the same time, I think we've gotten smarter about how we work, how we use technology to automate the way we work, and maybe that makes you more kind of focused on becoming more efficient as a result. So yeah, I think yes, it has made us more, or it has coincided with us becoming more productive.
Alexander, in your opinion, what's been the single most challenging habit that affects work-life balance?
I think the biggest one is still multitasking. And it's a story, as old as time. We all know, we've all grown up with that idea of multitasking is bad. If you switch tasks, your mind goes, it'll take 25 minutes to be able to get back onto task. And I don't know if it's because we just never believed that or we just thought that it didn't apply to us, but it's still that ability to focus and maintain focus and have attention is the biggest sort of skill set that I see missing in the digital workplace today.
Yeah, and that it does take us back to the smartphones as well. And often, so multitasking, for example, if you've got multiple notifications pinging through, it can be quite difficult to focus on one task, which might be on your computer, whilst you've got notifications coming through on your phone.
And there was some research done actually a few years ago where they had, under sort of lab conditions, they had sort of IQ tests. And they had a group of participants who had allowed to have their phones on them, with them at the desk whilst they did the test. A second group were asked to put their phones away, so they would put them in a pocket or in a bag, but it was still in the room. And the third group had the phones completely removed from the room. And the difference in sort of cognitive abilities was on average 26% for the group that didn't have phones in the room to the ones who did. And I think that's pretty shocking statistic, but it's also completely unrealistic to expect that people will go to their work and sit at their work in their desks and kick the phones out of the room. So again, it comes down to balance, circumstance, environment. If that's possible, if you're working in an engineering factory, then that's much easier. The phones can go in a locker and you go and do your job. But if you're sat in an open office environment at a desk or working from home, that's incredibly difficult. But I think if we can just tune into the aspect that, multitasking, is not good for our focus. And if you've got multiple devices and things that are distracting you, you need to try and sort of dim those down a little bit as much as possible.
And that's the thing, isn't it? Everybody's individual. So it's trying to support that individual and what's going to help them to be most productive. What support or what guidance do you give employees on how to switch off?
None. No. I mean, I feel from a leadership standpoint, and I think from a company standpoint, you'd like to be proactive about incremental things that can kind of help like that if it's better for business and better for people. Ultimately, we did something significant, which was force them to switch off by saying, for these 8 hours a week, they are your personal time. I guess we go a step further in that, is it's quite flexible about how that's done. So we have like moms and dads in the office that actually want to work 5 days a week, but just want to work different hours during the day, right? So I think there being a lot of built-in flexibility to that for them to choose how they schedule their time and how they switch off. I think culturally too, we respect that too. So I think there are some businesses that have done things like advertise unlimited annual leave and things like that, and their teams end up taking far less than companies with normal leave policies. I think we invest in that 4-day work week policy, but we respect it too. Now, even people can take their 4 days on different days. That's from a productivity standpoint. We're not closed on a Friday because we need coverage for our clients. So it has to be rotated around the teams so that we have that kind of cover. But I even find myself, and I think this carries with the team, is you're more conscious when you are maybe calling a team member of just ensuring it's not their day off. Maybe at some point, in the old days, if you called someone on a Saturday because it was an emergency, you knew it was their day off. You could be calling someone on a Wednesday now, and it could be their day off. So that creates a different kind of, requires a little bit more conscious effort like that. But again, putting this kind of program in place is one thing, but respecting it is another. Yeah.
Can I ask, do you think there is a minimum size of company where that's achievable, and if it was any sort of headcount less or number of offices less than that, then it's going to be a real challenge?
It depends on the nature of the service. I'd say you might be inclined to say you need a certain team size. I used to think when I moved over from the States and you had 2 weeks annual leave, I didn't know how you run a business with 5 weeks annual leave, and you were a very small business. But I think it's similar. I think we've been there I've been there as a 1-person business, a 2-person business, a 5-person business, and I think it can be done. Just I think the benefits far more outweigh the challenges that go with it. So.
I think that's really interesting, and your comparison to working in the US. There are many companies where they do a 5-day working week and people still feel that they need to be checking emails, working on a weekend. What do you think the difference is in terms of the culture at your organisation and the culture of other organisation where even a 5-day working week still isn't enough?
It is the culture of the particular business. If that's the culture and the norm, that's gonna permeate. The company I worked for back in the States before I started running tech businesses, if I didn't work 100 hours, no one said that I had a 100-hour work week. It wasn't in my employment contract, but that's what we worked. And 3 months before I started my own business, I was on a conference call with a client and I froze up in full panic mode out of sleep deprivation. But I knew I'd never want it to be that way again. But no, I think it's just, like you have practices that just perpetuate themselves over time, and it becomes very unspoken about working in those kind of environments that have those kind of demands. And yeah, technology can blur that and maybe make it feel less like managers or leaders are being less invasive than they are, when in fact they really are. So I'm pretty conscious about even when I'm sending emails. So you might think if I send an email on a Saturday to a colleague that it's not something that needs to be actioned till next week, but that might blow up in their inbox and getting them thinking more than they should. So little things like that do really mount up across the board. The way internal Slack and Discord channels are used that may not have had the initial intention to keep people thinking about working after hours do ultimately lead to that.
Burnout is a big issue. Did you see burnout when you were working those 100-hour weeks? Was it a regular occurrence amongst colleagues?
100%. I mean, people, but it was beyond burnout. It was Wall Street management consulting, investment banking, probably the worst of the worst in terms of like intensity, like burnout, almost like it was a badge of honor. Like you had to prove that you could work that way in those hours to earn your way, to be promoted. And if you didn't, it was a real problem. And yeah, I mean, people would drop like flies in terms of like illness etc. And it was a relatively young work environment at the time too.
What was the longer term impact on that for those individuals and the business?
I think it completely for the individuals it becomes ingrained in you, and you become that kind of manager. I mean that's how it all really. That's what the ripple effect becomes really, and you may become wealthier in the short or medium term as a result of it, but the work-life balance equation gets very skewed, and then you unfortunately grow up to become the toxic manager that you never wanted to report to. Mm-hmm.
And did that form part of the reason why you wanted to see a 4-day work week at VentureStream?
I think it was many years past that sort of like early career experience, and had, I think, good experiences, and tried to be a good employer and business builder from a people standpoint. Actually was in the business of ethical trade and fair trade for a long time, which was the very nature of the business itself was to help people around the world through the work that we were doing. So I think it probably ended up being, I don't think we were solving like a big problem. I think it was a natural evolution of what we already had in place.
For those businesses that have an always-on culture, how much do you think is about genuine business need, and how much do you think is about just they're in that routine in the day-to-day?
This idea of being always on, I think we can kid ourselves sometimes that we are being always on, but we're not actually, so I hear people all the time say, I'm working 80-hour weeks, 90-hour weeks. But actually, when you start breaking it down, they're not working 80 or 90-hour weeks. They're just constantly distracted 80 or 90 hours. And I'm not saying they're to blame for that, but it's more of a fact that they haven't got control over where their time, energy, and focus is going. It's more of the fact that they've just defaulted to always on and always saying yes and accepting everything. Now, there is the other side of that coin, which is when you've got people who are genuinely working those types of hours in a high stress environment, and they are going to burn out for sure. And that can be more of a cultural thing like Vic has shared there, or it can just be an expectation of the industry, not necessarily just of the organization, but of the industry. Or it can be you're on the front line, you're a doctor, you're a surgeon, you're, in the NHS, or you're in the police, or you're in the army. So there's those expectations where they don't have a choice. They have to be always on in those environments, and they need even more support to help to be able to disconnect and to be able to manage their time more flexibly in order to cope. But I think, all of the circumstances are very different. But I do now, depending on the industry and the career and the individual, but when somebody says, I'm working 100-hour weeks, I do tend to sort of think in the back of my mind, I question that. And that's maybe stems from the fact that I know that I'm lazy. And even if you sat me down and made me work 100-hour week, it would be about the equivalent of about 40 of somebody else. So I think, there's some of that at play as well.
Yeah. What advice would you give somebody who might be watching this, who struggles to switch off?
I think it's about understanding where their energy, time, focus, mental capacity is, what direction is it going in? Where's it being pulled to? You can start to monitor some of those things. There's tons of time trackers that are available, or you can just look at your own calendar and kind of see, where your energy is going, and what's leading to you either driving that requirement for you to work or to feel like you're working for that amount of time, or is there an opportunity to shave some energy outages off, or can you look at your usage of technology and your screen time? We've all got statistics built in now, and kind of say, well, maybe I could turn email off at 7:00 on an evening and not turn it back on until 8 a.m. Maybe that's something you can start to experiment with. But I think the first point is talking about it, whether it's with a colleague, with a friend, with a family member, with a boss potentially, as well. And just having these conversations is often the first step to realize that maybe this is a problem that it's not just you that's experiencing, but the whole team. And then actually maybe there's an opportunity, to really dial things up that could lead to being more productive, like Vic's 4-day week.
If an organisation's interested in starting a 4-day work week, what advice would you give them, particularly if they're concerned about staying competitive?
I think it is the kind of thing that a trial approach can work. I mean, we went through, but to do it systematically with your team. So we actually, even though we were working de facto this way during lockdown, we actually sat the team down and said, we are actually going to trial this. Considering we're a relatively small business, we said we're going to do it for 6 months. We're going to actually change everyone's terms and conditions. Like we kind of thought through as many of the nuances of how we would implement that, or how we would structure that trial, and we'd say we'd assess it. But if it didn't work, then it would have to be right for the business and people for us to carry forward with it. So I think it didn't feel like just a leap of faith.
In your vision of a tech-enabled future, what does it look like in terms of work-life balance?
I'm going to go a little bit left field here, because you mentioned there about the potential of technology to drive an even less, a 2-day working week or a 3-day working week. And I've been in conversations with, I guess you describe them as visionaries, where they paint this picture of the future of, this landscape where we don't have to work, and I just don't buy into it. I'm sorry, I might be Mr. Negative Pants, the pessimist in the room, but I just don't buy into it, because I think greed and the way of the world works, unless you fundamentally change how finance works and how wealth works and how, perhaps we all have, the universal basic income, those types of ideas, you would have to have that foundation there in order to be able to say, oh, we're all going to live a wonderful life because technology is doing all of the jobs that we don't want to do. Because I think what is happening, what I'm certainly seeing, is this race to the bottom mentality, because we feel as humans, it's sort of embedded within us that we want to benefit ourselves before we benefit anybody else. It's that classic hunter-gatherer mindset, right? You could claim it's in our, DNA, and it's how we've, evolution has made us, but, we still get to think independently. So I don't quite buy into that as well. But actually, if I'm given an opportunity that I can use technology to my advantage and your disadvantage, then, history tells us that humanity kind of goes down that road. And so I find it, I'm really empowered by people like you, Vic, who have this, idea of, well, I believe the 4-day week is right and the flexibility for our staff is right, and I'm going to pay for it through the business, and it's just the right thing to do. But I don't see that many Vics in the real world, and that's really sad. So I struggle with this idea that the tech-enabled future is going to make all of our lives better. I think it's going to make a small percentage of our lives better, and it's going to make the vast majority's lives much harder, because there'll be an expectation where if you're an employee with an AI tool that 10x is your productivity, I'm not just going to expect you to do 10% of what you used to do. I'm going to expect you and your new tool set to do the 10x output and work even harder, because you can have better results. That's the kind of mentality that I'm starting to see, and that I think unfortunately exists, that will prevent that future of, tech's gonna save everything.
Yeah. Well, I think work's also important in terms of for people's well-being as well, because it can give a sense of purpose. A lot of people in the workplace are really passionate about what they're doing and enjoy work, which is great. Vic, I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on this as well.
Yeah.
Shoot me down. Come on.
I think it's agreeing with maybe a mainstream side of what you're doing and commenting on, like me personally, in Venture Stream. First, back to the Henry Ford kind of story of the first material change from a 6-day work week to 5-day work week. The reason why he did it actually was his own enlightened self-interest. He thought if he gave his 100,000 employees an extra day off, it would create a mainstream movement of more personal time, which would create more demand for buying more cars to then line his coffers, Ford Motor Company. So I think you're right. At some level, there is the the capitalistic kind of drive around labor and who banks the benefits and how the benefits are shared from automations and advancements in technology. But I think there probably could be like an equivalent of, a fundamental shift in what technology is clearly doing right now in terms of like efficiency in work, the future of automation in work, to how some companies, maybe like us and others who want to do like right by their people and will do it, even if it's on the fringe of the commercial side of it. And I think we would, and I see that future and for other like-minded businesses. But I think the ones that are purely commercial will probably still see that there's some win-win to be had by passing along some of those benefits in terms of the nature of work. The reality though is like I'm a eternal optimist, independent of irrespective of age, and always been trying to strive for tech for good, kind of or see the tech for good side of technology. But ultimately, with all the advancements in technology in the last 25 years, internet, devices, etc., as a tool, it still requires us to like interact with it largely, right? And that actually hasn't really saved us a ton of time. Actually, it's what you're saying. It's actually probably just created more work in other ways or more distractions. But yeah, in a world where maybe we have our own AI assistant, actually doing some of the things that we do, depending on the nature of our work, somewhat autonomously, maybe it isn't something that I have to be necessarily switched on and off with it. Whether or not whoever has a robot vacuum cleaner at home, one of the more friendly, benign innovations, right? You genuinely don't have to be at home pushing that around if you use that, right? So I think there definitely will be some liberation of work because of some of what AI will do that maybe some technologies in the last 25 years haven't, and maybe the companies that are on the side of the work-life balance and kind of their own kind of people will do it for quasi or less commercial reasons. Maybe the biggest businesses will want their teams to have another day off for other reasons that are a little bit more balanced with commercial returns too.
Let's have a look at these, Pro.
We don't know if we've run out of time. We can come back and do
Let's
it.
See.
Do another one. Okay. So this is a luminometer. So this device.
It's like airport security.
Yeah, it's very similar.
Should I put my hands up?
We're going to get there. So this swabs surfaces and tells you the amount of bacteria that is actually present on a surface. So they use this in kind of restaurants and catering environments, and where cleanliness is paramount to being able to be in business. So I use this on people's phones to show just how filthy basically
your
phones and devices actually are.
Well, it is interesting because what else do you carry around as much as a phone?
I know.
So this is a swab.
Yeah.
So we take a wide sample surface area, and this is basically just picking up everything. It's not going to leave anything.
Meanwhile, like this morning, I sprayed my laptop this morning.
So we take a good sample. You can have
you should have definitely done it with a 3-year-old though.
It's okay. Bethany's next. I've got more than one swab. So the swab goes in. We release this liquid, which is classed as the activator, which basically, if I can get it to work, there we go, which gets squirted into there.
I feel like I am having flashbacks to a lateral flow test.
Yeah, open your mouth. So this picks up what I've just picked up on your phone, and we pop it in the device here, and it shines light basically through to give us a score. Now, anything over 30, if you were a restaurant, you'd be closed down basically. So under 30, we're okay. Anything over 30, and you're in trouble.
Bethany's gonna like.
So your score is 315.
You're definitely doing it.
Where's your phone?
Oh.
Yeah, you have to. No,
Come on.
Seriously.
It's only fair. It's only right. 315 is the score to beat.
It's competitive. I know you're competitive.
So it has to be said that, it's not all forms of bacteria are bad bacteria. I'm not sure if you...
I do. Oh, no, I actually do take a lot of, I do take a try.
Did you spill some,
Kefir? To be fair, I did have kefir this morning.
Bacteria is usually your own bacteria. So it's, it might be pretty gross, but it's your own gross. So it's not too bad. But it's definitely worth thinking about. I'll just pop it down there. It's worth thinking about it the next time somebody hands you their phone.
Yeah.
You might want to think twice. So we get the activator in there. Give it a good mix. So 315 is the one to be.
Okay.
Now you're definitely closed down as a restaurant.
Yeah.
So 30 is what you want to be aiming for. So it takes 15 seconds to do the reading. So do we think higher or lower?
It's got to be lower.
It's got to be lower.
Surely.
I mean, I'm a dirty American.
Hopefully.
Okay, 3 seconds, 2, 1. Do you want to break the news?
510.
510.
What? You're twice as dirty as me.
Not quite, nearly.
So this is definitely one of the more filthier podcasts that I've been. The whole point of this is just the fact that it's an incredibly inaccurate reading. Of course, we're not under the lab conditions here. Although I
did shower this morning.
I think it definitely
not this though.
It definitely does say that you both need to.
Mind you, I must have held your phone at some point.
I think that's probably why.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For me, the reason, is just a reminder for ourselves to sort of say, well, sometimes these devices don't have our
not benign completely.
All right. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.